For several weeks each year, residents across Southeast Asia can expect to wake up to skies grey, thick, and acrid. The root cause of this? Fires set by farmers in Indonesian provinces in Sumatra and Kalimantan to clear land for plantation during the dry season. The past month in Singapore has seen several consecutive days of very unhealthy and even hazardous PSI readings. The FINA Swimming World Cup was to be held in the island state for the very first time, but events were cancelled on day one due to health concerns. Across the nation, schools were shut with PSI levels reaching a record high of 320 at one point. Not only does the haze lead to teary eyes and scratchy throats, it has a lasting effect on our health. Studies have shown a direct correlation between the concentration of PM 2.5 particles in the air and average life expectancy. These particles are a source of concern as they are small enough to bypass body defense mechanisms and penetrate deep into the lungs. Then there are the economic costs. The Jokowi administration estimates that the haze crisis could set Indonesia back by up to 475 trillion rupiah, or 47 billion Singapore dollars. No small change to a government already grappling with a sliding currency and sluggish growth. In Malaysia and Singapore, flights have been cancelled and outdoor businesses forced to close. In 2014, the Singapore government passed the Transboundary Haze Pollution Act, or THPA, allowing the Singapore government to prosecute companies found guilty of contributing to the haze. The THPA complements the ASEAN Transboundary Haze Agreement, which paves the way for deeper cooperation between ASEAN members in preventing the annual haze. For the first time this year, Singapore began investigations into companies involved in starting the fires. In September, the National Environment Agency served notice to APP, seeking clarification on the company's Singapore subsidiaries, the Indonesian suppliers, and the steps taken to deal with the fires in their concessions. Major local retailers such as NTUC and Sheng responded by pulling APP products off their shelves. APP says it takes forest fires very seriously because they cost the company money and resources. Damages from the fires also cause suffering to its employees and threaten their investments in the forests. APP has deployed firefighting teams to manage the fires on its suppliers' land round the clock. Has APP really taken critical steps to manage the forest fires? Has the company been falsely accused? Should they be held morally responsible for the massive economic and human costs to the region? Watch our exclusive one-on-one interview with APP's Managing Director of Sustainability and Stakeholder Engagement, Ms. Aida Greenbury, to hear her answer these and other inconvenient questions.
Welcome to IQ Inconvenient Questions. I'm Viswa Sadasivan. This is an IQ Hit List special, an exclusive interview with Asia Pulp and Paper, or APP, one of the largest Indonesian conglomerates. APP is one of the 5 companies at the center of a probe by the National Environment Agency, or NEA, of Singapore in relation to the unrelenting, raging forest fires in Indonesia that has engulfed Singapore, Malaysia, and parts of Indonesia in a haze for weeks. APP has come out to explain its side of the story in the past few days especially. But this is the first time that a senior representative of APP will be giving an on-camera interview for a full hour. I told them that it would be a no-holds-barred interview. They agreed. This clearly speaks well for APP's commitment to transparency. With me in studio is Ms. Aida Greenbury, APP's Managing Director of Sustainability and Stakeholder Engagement, the person, you could say, who is directly in charge of dealing with the pressing situation we are facing today. Aida Greenbury, thank you very much for joining us today. I know that you must be extremely busy fighting fires.
Thank you.
Literally and
Yes,
metaphorically.
correct.
Let's get down to the questions, right? Now, in the past few days, APP has come out, made it a point to even meet the media in Singapore, which is good, which is very good, and I think people appreciate that. But however, there are there is a sense on the ground that the reason why you're doing it, your motivation, is not because you really care that this is affecting a lot of Singaporeans and Malaysians, and it's because you feel that your commercial interests are being affected. That's the sense people have. For example, APP started coming out only after the National Environment Agency of Singapore issued a notice. Now, you were silent before that, right? So I'm giving you an opportunity to explain why did APP choose to come out only when clearly your commercial interests were at stake, right? What's your response to this allegation?
I'm just going to be very honest with you. APP has not been very big in talking to the media with advertisement. We are focusing a lot of our energy and efforts in the last 3 years in trying to improve the way we manage our supply chain. It's forestry and also the plantations. We've been the first pulp and paper companies in Indonesia committed to zero deforestation, and millions and millions of dollars put into that effort. So we're focusing a lot of our budget for that improvement instead of talking to the media and to the public. Maybe it's wrong. I don't know. Maybe we should have talked more. Even though the public in Singapore probably only heard that we came out after NEA, but let me tell you, the people on the ground in our supply chains have been working on the ground to prevent this forest fire since months and months ago. We didn't talk much. We tried to prevent it and try to find solutions. And like I said, maybe we should have talked more to show our understanding about what Singaporean people feel and have been feeling until today. And that's one of the reasons why we came here, to show our concern.
Clearly, when the Singapore Environment Council, SEC, decided to suspend your green label certification, that would have an impact, right? That would have an impact on you commercially and in terms of your reputation. I mean, for example, immediately after that, NTUC FairPrice, Singapore's largest supermarket chain, as well as Sheng Siong, a very large chain, they yanked out all the products that had basic products from APP. Now, when the green label is removed or suspended by a fairly legitimate country like Singapore, it would have a ripple effect on many other countries as well, right? And some other multinational companies that run chains, supermarket chains, would also think twice about this. Now, in a world that is increasingly environment conscious, this could have a huge commercial and reputational impact on APP.
Correct.
And I put it to you that the perception is that's the real reason why APP is going out of its way to clear your name. Now, you see what I'm driving at?
Yeah.
You see, people are more interested in, are you sincere about this?
Yeah.
Are you doing it because you really care, or are you doing it because you want to show that you care, but when actually you're only caring for yourself, your commercial interests? How would you respond to this?
In order to drive change in forestry or any other supply chain change, there are so many elements in there, and I totally understand the public anger and respect SEC's decision to suspend the green certifications. We fully understand that, and I believe it's probably needed to make the full change on the ground to address haze and forest fires. I don't think any certification standards today actually really look into this risk, on how to manage this risk. It's probably being embedded in other parts of the certification standard, but not really looking into preventing forest fire. So I think what SEC's done woke everybody up, and I think it's
everybody, meaning who?
Everybody, every stakeholders in these issues, in the forestry issue, in Indonesia.
Okay.
And it's one of the actions probably needed to make a real change.
So it suggests to me, I mean, what you're saying suggests to me that that until now, there wasn't a clear awakening to this problem. And I find that quite disturbing because you're
Yes.
talking about a problem that has been afflicting us for 20 years. I mean, it started as far back as 1972.
Correct.
And then it peaked again in 97 and then in the 2000s, you know. I mean, as a Singaporean, as a person living here, I've not been able to play tennis in the past 3 weeks.
Yep.
Many of my friends who run regularly have not been able to do that. You have affected people's lives. And I find it extremely disturbing to hear that for 20 years, you've been sleeping. And then now you feel the awakening because the green label has been suspended. I find that disturbing.
People must understand in Indonesia, slash and burn activity is basically an activity used by community to burn certain land to plant other crops. Is a traditional activity by Indonesians in Kalimantan and Sumatra and everything else. When it was implemented 100 years ago, there's no problem. But it became a problem when the population went up and economic activity picked up. It became a problem because there's simply not enough land to do that. So slash and burn activity has been going on for hundreds and hundreds of years. And because
And
of
also
the
El Nino, right?
El Nino, I don't think so. Look, I'm not a climate change expert, but I only been alerted about the existence of El Nino in 1996-97. So that's when I really look into the impact in El Nino and how it destroyed South Sumatra province in 97 and 98. I think it destroys more than 3 million hectares of area in South Sumatra. But you know what, Viswa? Back then in 97 and 98, South Sumatra was destroyed, burned down because of El Nino. The interesting part is APP supply chain wasn't even there. Our suppliers did not even exist in South Sumatra. You know what it makes me realize is that the soil, the land in South Sumatra, as an example, I'm using South Sumatra as an example and not talking about the province, was already very, very degraded. Drainage was totally uncontrollable even back then in 97, 98. Even before our suppliers started operation in 97, our suppliers only started operating in 2005. So that's 8 years before our suppliers started operating. South Sumatra has already been down. So the issue was already there. My hope is that with our policy and the implementation of policy with zero burning, which was implemented starting 1996.
96, yeah,
And,
zero burning.
And forest conservation policy or zero deforestation policy that we started in 2013. We hope that we can help address that. We want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And we have done quite a lot in the past. We all know, I know, that the underlying cause of forest fires are several things. One is the irresponsible peatland management. And secondly is the incorrect community engagement. And thirdly, the lack of clear map to explain which concessions belong to whom. So these three are the underlying cause of forest fires. And even though our plantation in our supply chain is only less than 1% of the total forest fire, the total Indonesian forest, let me say it again. So our supply chain's plantation only represents less than 1% of total Indonesia's forest. But we try to do as much as we can to help address that. In the last 3 years, we have work together with the Forest Trust and Greenpeace, and also with Deltares, is a group of experts of hydrology management system, to try to define what is the best practice in peatland management.
Okay, let's hold it there. I think for my viewers, it's just overload of information. Huh?
Okay.
Let's unbundle the information.
Okay.
Let's take it one thing at a time.
Okay.
Let's talk about the complexity of the entire arrangement.
Okay.
Right? I think people would be interested to know, right? What is your relationship with your suppliers?
Okay.
Now, what do the suppliers own? What is it that you own? Who is responsible for what? How much of control do you have over your suppliers? Right? Could you explain that whole ecosystem, the
Okay.
logic of the ecosystem?
Okay, so we have in total 38 suppliers.
Yes.
So they're pulpwood suppliers, not just any suppliers. In total, we have 38 pulpwood suppliers in Indonesia.
How much of land or concessions, as it's often referred to as, in total, do all your suppliers have?
Being managed?
Is it 2.6
2.6
million hectares?
2.6 million hectares are the gross area.
Gross area. Could you
Gross-
explain what that means?
What it means? So when the government grant...
Sorry, 2.6 million hectares is larger than Singapore, right?
I think so.
I think so, yeah.
I think so,
So
yes.
I'm just going to give a sense of what so you're talking about that kind of magnitude of, you're saying it's gross.
Gross
Yeah.
area.
Okay, what does that mean?
It means that when the government grant a license to a company, the government will grant a license for a gross area.
Okay.
The gross area will need to be split into several type of land use. The first land use is basically to be developed into pulpwood plantation. Roughly in general, only 50% of the total concession area can be developed into pulpwood plantation. And then some
Or any plantation, right? I mean, in your case it's pulpwood, but there could be other palm oil.
I
oil
believe
palm.
I believe it's different for palm oil.
Okay.
Different type of license.
Okay.
I can only speak on
okay.
pulpwood plantations, and then other than the main plantations, the rest usually split between community forest, community use, forest conservation areas, and some infrastructure. So in general, only about 50%, that's usually maximum of our area, can be developed into plantations. So in total, the 38 suppliers that supply pulpwood to APP, they manage around 1 million hectares of pulpwood plantations.
Okay, 1 million hectares of pulpwood plantations.
That's correct,
right?
yeah.
Now, when we have these fires, right? How much of those fires come from the 1 million, which is pulpwood plantations, and how much of it comes from the other areas where you can't plant?
Okay.
You know, like the forests
Yes, I agree.
and community land?
Yeah, I understand. I think I cannot answer that question. But what I can answer is, if you ask me how much fires actually coming from outside the boundary of the concessions, I can answer because I've done some calculation.
Okay.
So based on some calculations that I've done, roughly more than 90% of fires coming from outside the boundary of the concessions. This is based on the analysis that I've done on the satellite image of the daily report of satellite image, and the hotspots has been reported to us every day. So based on that, you can actually see the movement of hotspot or forest fires in the concessions, and 90% of them are coming from outside the boundary.
So let me understand you here. So what you're saying is 90% of the forest fires are not coming from land that you're accountable for.
Correct.
That's what you're saying.
Correct.
Right? Because even though the 2.6 million gross land, hectares of gross land is being allocated to your suppliers, for which you are also accountable for,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You are saying that bulk of the fires are coming from outside of that.
Outside, even
Now
outside.
that's a
Yeah.
very important point you're making, because
Yes.
what you're saying is somebody else is responsible for these fires.
No,
not
I'm
you.
not saying that. I'm not saying that. I'm saying the source of the fire coming from outside the boundary.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that we're not responsible for it. We're still responsible to actually make sure that fire doesn't actually go inside our concessions.
And how do you do that?
Well, with the deployment of people on the ground, also aerial support, we have around 2,900 forest firefighters across the supply chain, plus around 2,600.
Are they trained firefighters?
Trained, yeah. So 2,900 people are trained firefighters, and 3 helicopters, and boats and pumps and all those kind of equipments. So we have those people. And then probably I'm just guessing your next question is there enough? Obviously it's not enough because fire is still destroying everywhere.
Yeah.
And I'm not a fire expert, but I'm relying quite a lot on the fire experts to advise us what to do. And in terms of this map and land use planning, I listen a lot to WRI, our World Resources Institute, that I have supplied all our suppliers maps to. And they said, publicly, they said that in normal condition, APP's firefighters' equipment usually enough. But in the current condition with uncontrollable El Nino, it might not be enough. And I guess we're too late to realize that.
Okay. Well, it's good that you're acknowledging that, right? Now, if we go back to the land, I'm quite surprised that you are able to accurately assess that 90% of the fires emanate from outside the area that you are accountable for. Because from what I understand, one of the biggest challenges that companies face, corporations face in Indonesia is the whole issue of land concessions. There are overlapping land concessions, so much so that nobody really can tell accurately where your land starts and where it ends, who owns which land, right? Because it is not public information, right? The map of land concession allocation is not public information. And then there are land conflicts, right? So you have all these issues, right? In fact, I think it's your, what's his name? One of your government leaders, I think from the ministry, right? He said that you cannot disclose the land allocation. Nur Masri Patin, Director General of the Climate Change at the Indonesian Ministry of Environment and Forestry, he said disclosing whose concession a certain hotspot is in would amount to disclosing a concession map, which is classified information, and we won't do it. Now, if that's a reality, that nobody really knows for sure who owns which land, how could you so clearly ascertain that 90% of the fires don't come from land allocated to your suppliers?
Can you repeat the last sentence again?
Right. You said just now that 90%, based on your calculations, 90% of the fires don't come from your area. I mean, the 2.6 million hectares, right? But what is clear here is that there's a lot of fuzziness, a lot of lack of clarity on who owns which land, right? Because of what the quotation I just read to you. It's not transparent. So I'm just very surprised. How can you say with so much of certainty that 90% of the fires don't come from your land?
Part of our forest conservation policy commitment is transparency. And for some of you who understand how paper supply chain is being implemented, if I sell my paper to you, you have the right to know where's that paper coming from.
Yes.
Which concession areas. Because of that requirement, we actually have submitted all the shapefile maps of all our suppliers to our own government and also to World Resources Institute.
Okay.
So we do know where we are operating in and where the supply chains are located, where they are, and everything, because we owe that to our customers. We have to be able to let them know. And one of the reasons why we supply that to the government is because the government is committed to finalize the one map, basically, for Indonesia to have one map as a Bible, as the main book that they refer to find out who owns which concession, who owns which land. In order to achieve one map, in order to complete one map, everybody have the obligations to submit their maps to the government to help them speed up the process.
And this is not happening?
We have done that in 2014.
Why is it that the government can't impose it?
I don't think I can speak on behalf
Yeah.
of the government.
But right now, it's not transparent, right? In total, yours, you're saying, is transparent, but countrywide, not everybody submits.
This is what I could say. What I can say is every business operators who operate in Indonesia or anywhere else in the world, they have moral obligations to be transparent to their customers and to their key stakeholders, such as the government, to tell them where they are operating. How do you know that this particular paper is responsible paper if you don't even tell them where it is coming from?
Okay.
So this is what I can say is every business operator, every organizations, NGOs or private sectors or others have the moral obligation to tell people where they're operating.
What's your relationship with the green groups? From whatever I've understood from my research, APP has not had a very good reputation historically with green groups, right? Now, for example, I think you had Greenpeace and a few other green groups lobbying against you and seeking a boycott of APP because of illegal logging, for example, in Cambodia, in parts of Indonesia. And they put tremendous pressure on large companies like Kraft and Mattel, the toy manufacturer, for which you had exclusive packaging sort of deal.
In the past, yes.
Right, in the past. And reports say that APP only stopped the illegal logging after Mattel and Kraft discontinued their commercial relationship with you. So there seems to be a pattern here, Aida, a pattern that you will awaken only when your pockets are affected.
Not really. Well, you know what? I'll be honest with you. Yes and no. Because how can you be able to ensure sustainability of your operations if you cannot ensure the sustainability of your operations economically? Sustainability is about economy, environment, and social. So those three need to be strong. So every time we make decisions, decision have to be taken from three different angles. So if you say it's because we are threatened economically, yes, partly you're right. But there are also other considerations as well. Let me correct you a little bit. Greenpeace and NGOs had problems with us in the past, prior to 2013, mainly because of the natural forest conversion, not so much on the illegal logging. So, so natural forest conversion. And back then, our operation, of course, actually is legal. But back then, we realized maybe there's some truth in what they're trying to campaign about. We just didn't understand their words. Like, for example, Greenpeace campaign against us was, you should also protect high conservation values, you should protect high carbon stock. In our mind, is corporate players, we don't understand how that translates into our financial report. So that's when we realized that we needed help. I think it's important for us and that we realized that we needed help. We reached out to the Forest Trust to please help us. Let us know what does Greenpeace and other NGOs actually want from us. Then somehow the Forest Trust are able to translate their the green group's requirement into the corporate wording, and that's where we understood. So once we reached that agreement in February 2013 between APP and the Forest Trust and Greenpeace, we designed a forest conservation policy together, and APP has been implementing it ever since with TFT.
So what's your relationship right now? Because you've had an on-off relationship with Greenpeace. You know, I would describe it as that. What's your current relationship with Greenpeace? Because I hear that earlier this year, they sort of disengaged with you because of that, the killing of the farmer, the incident where security forces who were alleged to be responsible were linked to APP. And so what is the current relationship with Greenpeace? Are they in support of you? Do they feel that you are responsible or not?
Greenpeace will only support APP or any other players around the world if they believe that these companies are doing the right thing. So Greenpeace request to APP is for APP to stop cutting natural forest and for APP to implement our forest conservation policy or zero deforestation policy. So they've been monitoring us totally independently. They never stopped their campaign, actually. Before they campaigned against us on the street and unrolling banner on the buildings. But right now, they basically campaign against us in the board meeting room. So if they see something they don't like, they still yell at us. So that's the current relationship between Greenpeace and APP. But thankfully, until today, it's still very constructive.
Okay. Now, you have made quite a few announcements in the last few years. And in 2013, a very important policy, right, forest conservation policy. And Greenpeace supported that very much, from what I understand. And then in '96, zero burning, zero deforestation, all those things. I mean, these are big announcements, right? Yeah. Yet APP seems to have a credibility issue when you make these statements. I'm being very blunt, right? When APP makes a statement like this, people don't take it at face value because of legacy issues, right? Bottom line, Aida, I don't think people trust you enough. People outside trust you enough because I'm getting that from all the readings I've done, right? Not a very strong reputation in terms of responsible management of land, right? Not only in Indonesia, but in all other parts of Asia, right? So we don't want to go into the legacy issues, right? But the point here is this: people don't trust what you say. People don't take what you say at face value, right? In fact, what I gather is that the Singapore government doesn't take what you say at face value, right? It could be because you're big, you're the world's largest pulp and paper company, right? There's an expectation that you can do more and that you should be walking the talk. So my question to you is this: what is the single most important factor or compelling argument that you would present to the people out there to make them trust you and believe you?
We never ask our stakeholders to trust us, but we let the truth speak for itself. That's why we committed to transparency. That's why we provided our maps to World Resources Institute so people can see and monitor how forests disappear or reappear. And we open our operations to everybody. I mean, if you tell me that you're going to go check our operations tomorrow, I will say, yes, please. We do not hide anything, and we try not to hide anything, and we want to be as transparent as possible so people see how we walk the talk. I don't want to talk too much. Like I said before, we're not really big in PR or window dressing, but we allow people to see themselves, the beautiful, the ugly words and all. If there are problems, we tell people there are problems. And yes, of course, there's so many room for improvement. Nobody's perfect. We try to do our best. But of course, forest fire is still happening. Obviously, something is not working. That's where we need to look at and to where can we improve the way our supply chain being operated. And I believe the solution is there.
You said, Aida, that APP, quote, gains absolutely nothing from burning land. That you lose out a lot as a company, commercially, right? And that therefore that you take forest fires very seriously. Now, can you tell me, in a nutshell, how does APP stand to lose out when you have these forest fires, slash and burn? Because the assumption here is that you close an eye and you let it happen in your supplier's concession land. That's the assumption. Now, how do you respond to that? If
forest fire destroy our plantations, we have to make sure that we have to make sure that we plant the plantation back. Otherwise, our mills will not have enough wood to supply. If our mills do not have enough wood to supply, then our mills have to basically close down. So if the forest fire destroys our plantation, we have to replant protect the area. But if forest fires destroys the natural forest or the conservation areas, because we are committed to zero deforestation, we have to also restore. And all of this...
Reforest.
Yeah, to restore the forest or to reforest it with natural forest. All of this costs money. I mean, for plantation, the initial investment alone is up to $2,000 per hectare, just for plantation. And for natural forest restorations, the cost is varied between $500 to $1,500 per hectare. Why would we want to burn something and then we have to restore something with our own money? Nobody else will pay for it. So it just doesn't make sense. That's why, I mean, this has to stop. The forest fires has to stop.
Now, let's now move on to something a little bit more, talking about accountability to the region. You know, there's a responsibility that comes with being the biggest.
Yeah.
There's a responsibility, a moral responsibility that comes with being the leader of the pack, so to speak, in pulp, right? So whether or not it has been proven that it is your land or your concession, there is a certain moral responsibility that APP has to make sure that you lead, you take a leadership role in this entire initiative to do something about this. Now, let me give you a sense of how much people in the region have suffered. It's not 1 year, 2 years. It's been for 2 decades. It started as far back as 1972, right? And then 1997. And then in 2000s, it's been almost every year, right? It's led to chronic lung disease, because there are metal particles that actually can get embedded in the lungs, leading to serious lung problems down this, Just this year alone, major events had to be cancelled. Sports, international events had to be cancelled in Malaysia and Singapore. People can't go out. People can't walk. The bill, the amount of the cost to the economy, in the 97 haze, I think the cost to Singapore was about 200 million average, right? And the Indonesian government recently estimated that the cost to Indonesia's economy for this year alone is about 46 billion, right? I mean, I'm just taking these pieces of information at face value, right? Schools have been closed now, and this has been going on for year after year. Now, where is your moral accountability to this? I mean, sure, you may say that you are just one part of the equation, but you are a very important part of the equation. You are APP. So where is your moral responsibility?
I mean, it is our moral responsibility to make sure that the whole supply chain complies with our policy in zero burning and zero deforestation. And then we have to actually, like you said, show leadership role. And we have been trying to show this leadership role over the years with the implementation of zero deforestation. It is legal to convert a natural forest into plantation in Indonesia, but we decided not to do it. That's the first thing that we want to show as a leadership role. And then secondly, we have to address peatland management. And we have done something really drastic just 2 months ago. We drowned our own existing commercial plantations. Why? So that the surrounding peat landscape can be protected. That's drowning more than $50 million of investment. That's leadership. And of course, we cannot see the impact right away because this activity is ongoing. We cannot see the impact right away, but hopefully that can be the start of something massive for people to realize that we need to restructure the way we manage our peatland. And that's the underlying cause of forest fire.
Now, let's go to the whole issue of peatland, right?
Okay.
Again, for the benefit of my viewers, I mean, there's no peatland in Singapore.
Okay.
There's no peatland in Malaysia. So people don't quite understand this whole issue of peatland. Now, from what I understand, peatland is highly combustible when it's dry,
Dry.
right? But in its natural form, it's actually wet, right? It's wetland, right? Now, can you explain to us how, when peatland, first of all, maybe you want to explain what is peat. I mean,
Okay.
how does peatland come about?
Okay.
And which parts of Indonesia? I believe southern Sumatra, a lot of peatland,
Yeah.
right? But maybe tell us a little bit about what is peatland.
Yeah.
If the natural state is wetland, how is it that quite a lot of the peatland is bone dry, which makes it highly combustible, right? And why is it so difficult when it's peat fire? Why is it so difficult to fight peat fire, right? Now, 40%, it's estimated that 40% of the fires that we are seeing in Indonesia is peat fire, right? Now, that's quite serious. So, can you share with us, in layman's terms, what is
Okay.
peatland?
First of all, I'm not a peat expert. I rely a lot on our partner on this, which is Deltares. So I'll try the best I can. So peatland, what is peat? Peat is basically compilation of twigs and leaves and branches falling from trees for thousands and thousands of years, which are under the water, so it's waterlogged. Because it's been compiled for thousands of years, they develop some kind of dome that is consisting of those little twigs and branches. They store a lot of carbon in those little twigs because obviously wood store
Yes.
carbons because they're all kind of preserved, waterlogged under the water. They store a lot of carbon. So that's basically the simple explanation of what peat. And then peat doesn't really just happen there or there. No, peat, because of the peat is actually developed into such massive peat domes or massive landscape. One landscape in South Sumatra that we are working on to conserve right now, for example, is 3 times the size of Singapore. That's just one peat landscape, because peat landscape is built upon all these massive remnants of trees from thousands of years. So that's the peat landscape. And then, so you can imagine, so a stack of twigs and branches waterlogged. So if the water is drained, the stacks of twigs and branches become exposed to the air, right? And if you light fire into stacks of twigs, what will happen? It's just gonna go totally combustible like that. But it's become an ongoing issue because I think almost 20 million hectares of land in Indonesia is peat. And let me speak on where our supply chain is operating, because that's the area that I know best. In Sumatra, our supply chain operates in Riau, Jambi, and South Sumatra. Riau has the most peat. 60% of Riau province, which is just next door from Singapore, is peat.
60%?
Almost 60 to 70%, roughly, is peat in Riau.
Jambi?
Jambi, not so much because our supply chain is not really operating on the peat area, so I don't know the number more than Riau. I know for sure that Riau has 60 to 70%. I think Riau has most peat compared to the other 3 provinces, the other two provinces.
So tell me how, from its natural wet state, how it has become dry. I was told, and there's literature to highlight this, that actually it's drained and canals are formed. And the canals are a major mode of transportation for the logging companies. Therefore, it's in the logging companies' interest to actually drain the water out. Is that true?
True. It's true. And not just logging companies, basically any agriculture trees or species, because for palm oil, pulpwood plantations, rubber, almost every plantation that you name cannot really grow on the waterlogged peat. In order for them to grow, you have to drain the peat. Now, unfortunately, this, how can I start? Indonesia doesn't really have very comprehensive peat map. So if you don't even have the map, you don't even know what you have. How do you know how to treat something if you don't even know what you have? You know what I mean?
Yes, yes.
So
you don't know where it's peat and where it's not.
Exactly.
Because peat is actually below the surface.
Correct.
Right?
Well, it can go up and down.
It can go up and down, but it can go right down to 20 meters, I hear.
Yes.
Underground.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So what you're talking about, peat fire, is the fire can be underground.
As long as it doesn't touch water, yes.
As long as, so you can have fire spreading below the surface.
Correct. You
Now
don't see anything but a little bit of smoke, because they travel under the ground.
And it's real fire.
It's real fire. It's like, what's in English? Smoldering. Yeah, smoldering fire
and
under the ground.
Does it travel very fast?
Under the ground, no. It doesn't travel very fast underground, but you cannot see, so you don't know where it goes.
But how do you fight such fire? Peat fire.
You can see it from. You can't really. You can see from the smoke, but you can't really
but smoke
fight.
everywhere.
Yeah. So you can't really. The only thing you can fight it with is just basically release the canal. If there's release the flap of the canal, and if there is water, just flood the area.
Flood it, which is what you did.
It is what we've been doing.
And how much of land, how much of peat land have you now flooded?
Oh, I don't have the hectares in my head right now, but the one that we already drowned because of the critical pit, because it's located nearby in the critical pit area, is 7,000 hectares. But on top of that, there are 1,000 hectares more of canal already being blocked. In that particular canal blocking areas, I don't have the total hectareage yet.
So you're doing this, you're drowning the peatlands again.
And increase the water level.
Increase the water level to prevent it from becoming combustible.
Yes.
Right? And that means that you can't use the land for plantations. You can't use the land for commercial use.
I think the key for responsible peatland management is that you have to be able to control the water level.
Right.
So during wet season, you can actually close the or open the flap during dry, so you can actually control it to allow the plantation to continue to grow.
Yeah. Now, you have actually done peatland best practice management project.
I have not done it. We are in the process.
In the process.
Yes.
Could you share a little bit of that? And I was told that you have an ongoing relationship. You've engaged the services of a global technology company called Deltaris, a Dutch company, to do what is known as light detection and ranging, or LIDAR.
Yeah.
Right. Now, could you tell us a little bit more about that? In relation to the complexity of dealing with peat.
This is related to I just told you that Indonesia doesn't have a really comprehensive peat map. In order to be able to manage peat, you have to know where peat is located, right? That's obvious. So the only technology right now that we can use to find out where peat is located, how thick they are, and everything else, is by using the LiDAR mapping technology. So that was requested by Deltaris and Greenpeace last year. So we decided to fly the LiDAR mapping LiDAR mapping plane, and
at your cost.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's almost $1 million for the plane itself, and then the raw data is now being collected by Deltaris and APP.
So how does it work? They run sorties across.
They basically have flight tracks, and they have to go ping, 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 and then the coverage of the signal is covering 5 million hectares of area.
Okay.
So we will end up with 5 million hectares of peat mapping in our hands.
That's to identify where it's peat.
Yeah, where peat is located, how thick they are, how deep they are, and what kind of hydrology management can be implemented to those areas to make sure that they remain protected and doesn't get burned. That is the number one thing that we need to go where we want to achieve.
So for how long have you been doing this? I mean, when did you embark on this?
After the forest conservation policy was announced, because that's one of the requirements is to adopt best practice management.
Are there other countries in the world that adopt this practice? Peat mapping?
Oh, I'm sure there are.
What would be some of these countries? Because you said it's best practice, right?
Yes, but what I meant by best practice is there is no such thing as best practice for tropical peatland management. I'm sure they've done some kind of LiDAR mapping for other purposes around the world, but don't ask me where because I'm not an expert. But for the tropical peatland best practice, there's no such thing, and we are trying to identify and implement it. And we will share this information to public so other people, other actors in the landscape can adopt the same thing.
Well, that's very good to know. Now, at a system level, I mean, we have got about 10 minutes left for this interview.
Okay.
So let me ask you some broad questions. What do you think needs to be done? There are many players involved, right? There are large corporations like APP, there are smaller companies, and there are small farmers, right? You have the entire ecosystem. And then you've got the government agencies, you've got other semi-government agencies, and so on. You've got communities, right? Now, everybody is involved in this ecosystem,
Yeah.
right? Now, what are the three most important things that needs to be addressed? I would appreciate it if you would be absolutely honest here. What do you think are the three areas that needs to be given a lot more attention if we want to prevent fires?
Well, first, we got to stop burning. We got to stop burning activity for slash and burn. But yes, community use it as a traditional way, so it is our job.
How do you stop it? I mean,
we have to support the government to implement regulations to make it stop.
But what's stopping you from implementing it?
The government is in the process, and we support them. They are in the process to revise the regulations to allow people to burn. But that's not the solutions. Yes, the government can implement the regulations, but our job right now is basically help the government to support the community, provide them with alternatives to develop land to burning. So do not use fire to develop your land. This is the alternative technology. You can develop land without burning by doing this. And I think private sectors, especially us, we can do something to support the community by providing technology or some financing. That's one. So stop the burning.
Is that in the pipeline? Is that going to happen?
I think so. We've been talking to some associations, including the Palm Oil Association.
And cooperatives, right?
And cooperatives. And APP alone, we've also been talking to our NGO partners as well to try to generate finance to support the community to adopt more responsible forest or other plantations practice. Can be providing to alternatives to burning, also providing alternatives to draining peat. So it's in the pipeline.
I'm happy to hear this, but it also is very disconcerting that after 20 years, you're doing it now. Why couldn't this have been done much earlier?
I think our job as private sector, we have to support the way the community develop their land. We have limitation in what we can do, even though they're allowed by regulations to develop land while burning in the past. We have been concentrating on providing alternatives to the community. That's what we can do as the private sector player.
So, if you can explain to me in specific terms, talk about APP, right? What are some of the things that APP is prepared to do to help small farmers, communities, move away? You know, I guess you have to provide them with alternatives, with incentives to move away from slash and burn, right?
Yes.
Because slash and burn is the cheapest,
Yeah.
right? So what are some of the plans, specific plans that you have to move them out of it?
A specific plan is part of our sustainable forest management plan for each concessions, where we need to address the need by the community. We need to resolve conflicts. If there are conflicts found, what the conflicts are, and we have to help them. Part of the conflicts is because they want to develop the land, and so we are going to develop some kind of collaborations to support them in terms of equipment, in terms of seedling, and everything else that make sure that they do not develop land while burning. That's ongoing right now.
All that at your own cost?
Yes. Yes.
So this becomes your CSR?
Yes. And there are other programs in the pipeline as well with more share cost, basically addressing not only community in the concessions, but also communities outside the concessions as well, working together with other NGOs, other government agencies and stuff like that. We are also developing this pilot project in South Sumatra as well. So that's also in the pipeline. I don't remember what we've done in the past. It's not in my head right now, but we've done quite a lot in the past. But of course, we do need to improve this. So that's my first message,
yep.
Stop burning. And second message is everybody, every actors in the landscape will need to adopt best practice on peatland management. Basically means please do not drain the peat without any proper control. So we need to make the peat as wet as possible for the existing peat already been developed. And how? We need to listen to the science. So that's one of the reasons why we engage with Deltares, and now we're in the middle of a process to engage with local university as well to actually find what the solution is.
How much of the total peatland in Indonesia is under APP?
Oof, that's a tough question. Let me see. Total peatland in Indonesia is 20 million hectares. The existing plantation in our supply chain is 1 million hectares, and out of the 1 million hectares, roughly, possibly about 50% is on peat. So 500,000 hectares is on peat.
Okay, so yeah, so
that's just
it's
a quick calculation in my head right now.
Well,
yeah,
that
yeah.
will be 1/40th of.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, so unless the others in whose concessions you have peatland actually do something, it's not going to make any difference.
Correct, yeah. That's why we've been also trying to...
but as a leader, as a leading conglomerate, what's the role you can play?
We have to engage them. We have to...
Are you doing it?
Yes, we have been doing it. We have not yet shown enough progress, I have to admit, because it's not easy to try to make other people believe in what you believe in, and but we've been starting to engaging other stakeholders, such as in West Kalimantan. We're working with other concession players. They've been very supportive. With the government agencies in South Sumatra, they've been very supportive. So we will continue to do that. We will never stop. We have to engage other actors in the landscape to achieve what we want to achieve. Green growth is possible without giving any negative impacts to the environment. It's possible, and we need to show it to others. So that's the second message that I want to convey: responsible peatland management. And thirdly, which is very important, is transparency and the completion of one map, which is also government's policy right now.
It'll take another 2 years?
I'm not sure, but the previous plan was to finalize everything by 2020. Oh. But everybody has the same obligation to support the government, to submit whatever data they have to the government to speed up the process. And one thing that I would like to say, Singapore is actually playing a very big role to help us. In addition to the G2G collaborations they've done in the past in Jambi, for example, in addition to that, they can also ask everybody who sell products to Indonesia to be transparent with their supply chain and make sure that their supply chain is responsible.
Sell products out of Indonesia?
No. Everybody who sell products in Singapore need to be committed to transparency and declare where the products are coming from.
Yeah.
They need to do it.
Well, that's why the green label was suspended, because of this, right?
I don't know the green label standard, but the traceability is basically covered by some certification, but it's still voluntarily. I think this methodology should be adopted by Singaporean government, that all companies selling their products in Indonesia and in Singapore, must declare the supply chain.
Yeah, and I think that's a very important point you've raised, and it's something that I think the Singapore government in particular should, and I believe is beginning to look at. There are many ways in which pressure can be, it can be through boycotting, it can be through ensuring that only environmentally responsibly produced pulp or products would be on the shelves. Third, there could also be other forms of penalties for suppliers
Yep.
who are recalcitrant. You know, there could be sanctions. There could even be immigration. You know, you're not allowed to come to Singapore. There could also be finance and banking restrictions, right? So many of these things can be done, and I agree with you that this. But I'm happy to hear you say that this should be done.
But also, mind you, everything you said is not the solution.
It's not a
We
solution.
have to go. Singapore
Yes.
also have to go beyond that to help other countries such as Indonesia and Malaysia to work together to find the real solution on the
Well,
ground.
as you know, Singapore has been offering. It took Indonesia a long time to accept our offer, but we won't go there, right? Now, let me maybe in conclusion ask you this. Singapore government should, I think, have and has come to the end of our tether. Means we've had it, you know.
Yeah.
Now, if the Singapore government doesn't take a firm stand, it's going to incur the anger of Singaporeans, because I think Singaporeans have come to a point where we can't take it anymore.
Yeah.
Right. Now, this means that companies like APP would be expected to be a lot more transparent in the years ahead.
Yeah.
To demonstrate a lot more communication, explanation, open your books, show us what you are. You prepared to do that? Which brings me to the question: you had a meeting, I think last week. You and your senior management had a meeting with NEA.
Yes, correct.
Right. Maybe you could share with us what were some of the commitments that you made in that meeting.
Oh, we made commitment publicly that we will supply the information requested by NEA, and we did. We supplied the informations to NEA according to the deadline, which is the 2nd of October. I think we had constructive discussion with NEA, and they also requested additional information, and we promised to submit it.
Okay.
I believe we're on the right track.
You sound tired when you say that.
Because I cannot speak on behalf of NEA. But I hope we are on the right track.
Okay. Is there anything you want to say to Singaporeans and the other people in the region who have been suffering?
We live on one planet, and what happened in Indonesia will affect Indonesia, but also will affect the rest of the people in the planet. And Singapore, as the closest neighbor, of course, will be heavily impacted for whatever happened in Indonesia. So it's very, very sad. I mean, I've seen people in my own country, in Sumatra, my own employees, thousands of employees also suffering, and I can imagine the suffer that has been endured by Singaporeans as well. We got to stop this together, and we have to find solutions to this together. And I hope it can be achieved sooner than later.
Aida Greenbury, thank you very much for making the time to be
you.
here. Well, I hope that what you have said will be done.
Thank you.
Right. And I think Singapore and the people in the region are counting on large conglomerates like APP to continue to play a leadership role and a very important role. You know, otherwise things are not going to move.
Yes.
And I wish you all the best
Thank you.
going forward.
Thank you.
You have been watching an interview, an exclusive interview with Ms. Aida Greenbury, Asia Pulp and Paper, and she's the Managing Director of Sustainability and Stakeholder Engagement with APP, Asia Pulp and Paper. She's been here to address inconvenient questions on the forest fires in Indonesia that's been causing the haze in Singapore and the region. Thank you for tuning in. We invite you to share your views on this interview or any other viewpoints on this subject at our website www.iq.sg. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Remember, you ask, they answer, we make it happen. This is IQ Inconvenient Questions.